Speaker of the House is in the House. We got a lot to cover tonight. So we got a new set, new break.
The Dan Yorke State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Takeo Comfort Solutions.
All right, we're at warp speed here this evening. Welcome in. Since we last left you for original commentary, because we don't tape on Fridays, the government shut down, and most likely by the time you're seeing it, the government's open again. But we'll get to covering that a little bit later on this week and probably next week. This week we are loaded up. The Speaker of the House is here. The Governor's here tomorrow. Wednesday, Senate President Ruggiero is in here, and then the minority leaders on Thursday and Friday. So we're trying to grab the state of the state ourselves by all of the leadership, and we thank them all for participating in the conversations this week. In the meantime, I've been on both radio and television covering this Violet Lamar case. Just a quick note before we get to the Speaker of the House. And I actually have a thought that I'd like to generate from him, not on the case specifically, but just on communication between the legislature and the education world. Here's a quick headline. This is Violet Lamar, the principal of the Kazarian Elementary School, who's all jammed up for not reporting to DCYF on a 24-hour notice. The stories of two students who came to her back in May 9th of last year saying that the gym teacher had allegedly touched them inappropriately. All the nuances and specifics of this we'll get to at a later date when we can, but there's clearly a discrepancy between the prosecutor and the defense as to what was sexual in nature, and the judge went screaming the way of the prosecution today. The prosecution, after a guilty verdict for Ms. Lamar for violating the 24-hour rule, meaning not reporting to DCYF on time, asked for 6 months suspension, 6-month probation. The judge gave her a year probation, a year suspension, and remanded her to 150 hours of community service in a sexual assault facility. They're appealing, and the defense attorney says we'll fare better with a jury.
Well, I'm not necessarily saying I'm confident, but I think if the information that was out there, it certainly shows reasonable doubt. We're confident that perhaps 12 other eyes on this case would give a different result. So I don't really want to go into anything else too specific, but we're very disappointed, and she took an immediate appeal and is anxiously awaiting to be tried by a 12-member jury of her peers.
We'll see. I'm calling an audible here and bring the speaker on a few seconds early. Welcome. Thanks for coming. Good to see you.
Thanks, Dan. Nice to be on your show.
Oh, you have a reflection on not on the case because you didn't try it and you're busy working for a living and legislating for a living. But one of the things which is really unbelievable in this case is that the principal was unwitting about the law that the General Assembly had passed and the governor had signed a year prior with this 24-hour reporting rule and criminal accountability. So too with the middle management. So was the superintendent. The old, ignorance is no defense plays into the case. But what's going on with the communication between the legislature and the school systems? That's unbelievable.
I don't know. The Department of Education certainly has liaisons. They're certainly aware of what we're doing, and they certainly have enough employees, so they should be disseminating that information to the superintendents, the school committees, and everybody in the school system.
I wonder if it's not appropriate for you or somebody in the General Assembly to make commentary on the floor about this case when you've got points of personal privilege, to actually just reflect on it, because that which you do at the State House needs to be properly reflected. I'm not putting any blame on the General Assembly here. What I'm saying is that the world needs to pay attention to what you're doing, and that is not something that was like on the top of the heads of both the state and the largest school system in the state. Whew, not good.
Yeah, it wasn't really the world. I don't expect someone that's an engineer to know about education rules.
Right.
But a principal should have been in communication with the Department of Education, or the other way around, and they should be informing everybody of what the new changes are in the law.
But I'm talking about from the system down, from the state, from the General Assembly to the State Department of Ed, to the systems, to the rank and file. I mean, it wasn't done. It's not good.
The Department of Ed participates. They're there. They know what we're doing, so they just didn't communicate it down. Or maybe, and perhaps they did, and this principal just missed the memo or didn't participate in something.
Speaker, it's not just the principal, it's the superintendent. I'm talking about the whole doggone the whole system in Providence was unaware. Anyway, not your case, but
that's a concern.
Oh, you bet. You know, we ought to, like, make a note. We ought to talk to the commissioner about this when we get a chance. In the meantime, headlines like this in the newspaper today. Everybody's trying to work out the governor's last week's state of the state. Here was the flavor of her speech in a few seconds.
We begin this year stronger than we've been in decades.
Think so?
I think we're doing fairly well, and I say we, myself, the governor, the Senate president. We're moving in the right direction. We've been pushing in the right direction for at least a decade, and we're seeing some of that results. I don't want to be too positive because some folks will say, wait a minute, I don't have the job that I want. There's not enough of a recovery for the middle class, and I agree with that. But I do agree with the governor. We're doing better than we were. Our rankings are improving. Our unemployment rate is coming down. Our total employment numbers have recovered. But the kinds of jobs that we have are not exactly what we want. So I agree with the governor to a certain extent. Good work on her part, the General Assembly. But we have a lot of work left to do. So I'm not taking a victory lap right now.
Aren't we just kind of following, for the most part, the momentum of the country?
We are. You're always, no matter what you do, you're going to be tied into the country and to the national economy. However, if you look at the things we've done over the last 10 years, the Rhode Island tax system, regulatory system, we're much better than we were. We're now competitive. We're competitive with our neighbors. We're more competitive than Connecticut in a lot of areas. You see folks talking about actually moving from Connecticut into Rhode Island because they haven't done a lot of the reforms that we've enacted in Rhode Island. So we are certainly moving in the right direction. It's not by accident. It's by a lot of hard work. And the governor certainly shares in a lot of that hard work.
All right, let's talk about a couple of the issues that I think are most important. Schools on top of everybody's mind. Here's what the governor said about funding for the improvement of the schools.
Let's commit to investing $1 billion over the next 5 years to finally fix our public schools.
Kind of like Dr. Evil, in the movie, $1 billion. But isn't it the truth? We already have over the next 5 years, if we go over the course of what you've been spending already, $80 billion a year times 5, $500 million, $80 million a year times 5, $500 million are already in the culture of the General Assembly for school repairs, correct?
Yes, I believe.
The $500 million more would be what you would probably go out the referendum for capital improvements. I'm not defending the condition of the schools, but the notion, the big applause about it feels like a new $1 billion, it really isn't.
Well, I believe, and I've got to look at the specifics of the plan, and I've in my conversations with the governor and our treasurer, I've indicated that the details are very important. We have schools that need work, and I concur with the governor. And I've taken tours on some of these schools. There's mold on walls.
They're a mess. They're a disgrace. But my point is that even with the $80 million a year we've been spending, we're slipping. But this is not a new $1 billion. It seems to me it's a new $500 million.
I believe that this is a new $1 billion on top of what we're already spending, but I'm not sure about
not
the
my
details.
read of what her budget. Okay, so
right.
That's an indication of what the process looks like. Governor lays it out, and then you dig in. You don't spend a whole lot of time negotiating with her what she presents in the state of the state, do you?
No. We had some very general conversations. I was not aware of most of those details.
She continues to champion the idea that the roads and highways are getting fixed, and I think everybody thinks that's a great idea. But I have to tell you something. I'll bet you a beer we're never going to get these tolls. It's an election year. Now, you came to the tolls later in the deal. In fact, you actually re-owned and reshaped the entire roadworks thing from Governor Raimondo. And you argued that the tolls were, not something you'd love, but it's necessary. You got to. Are you really going to beat down on the administration following through with executing on this toll program? They've got two that they're still finishing up hearings in South County. And then we got that rope-a-dope with possible litigation from the Truckers Association. They're going to wait until all the tolls go up to sue, which leaves us in this kind of jackpot. In a political year, Do you actually think the governor is going to meet those, and would you support her meeting those deadlines for 14 to 17 tolls?
Oh, absolutely. Whatever the schedule is, the administration should meet, and they should get them up. We passed the legislation. The governor asked us to. We amended it. We made it better. You're correct, Dan. I actually cut it in half and lowered the toll amount, and we passed it. So it's the law. It should be executed appropriately, properly, and timely. So we'll see what happens.
Are you going to cry out, and if that schedule slows down or becomes even more ambiguous than it is? I'm telling you.
I don't know.
Forget
if
the
I'm
formality
cry
here.
out,
You really think we're going to have 14 to 17 tolls in the next year and a half? Come on.
It doesn't look like we're on target for that, but the two on on the southern border of the state will go up, and we'll see what happens thereafter. I do think it's going to give us some essential incremental financing, and it's going to allow the state to do big projects in the future and more projects, and finally stop maintaining our roads and bridges like we never did before in almost our history, probably our history. So it's important, and people seem to like the road construction. They
without a doubt, but I would bet you by the time you do the math at the end of this whole thing, you can still do what you need to do without having the tolls. But we'll play that.
You could actually do a lot of it, but not all of it. There's the incremental projects and all of the maintenance you want to be able to do. We haven't been able to do it in the past. You will be able to do it now. And as you get to the 30-year mark, we're actually going to have a lot of resources to potentially do some big projects that are going to assist our citizens.
All right, when we come back, there's this ball club thing. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
I think a new stadium, subsidized by the taxpayers in Pawtucket, is going to bring that back.
Bring that back is, I guess, quality of life, Pawtucket, revitalization, all that kind of thing. That is Steve Frias, who fell 87 votes short of the Speaker of the House in the last election, and who I think just kind of looms in your political minds when he says 2 out of 3 people in the district, sign a petition. They don't want to see the PawSox Stadium built with public money. Is he in your head, by the way?
No, the public is. He's right. He happens to be right. When I went door to door in actually his neighborhood, it was 19 out of 20 people said no public financing.
Because you asked them, or because they brought it up?
I asked them. I went. Yeah. It was in the fall. I actually knocked on their door and asked them, and that was their opinion. So sometimes if you don't ask, you really don't know what your constituents are thinking. I've learned that. And so I went out in the fall, and I was surprised at how opposed people are to public financing. And the colleagues that I have that actually did the same thing are reporting the same thing to me. It's not just in Cranston or in District 15 in Cranston. It's throughout the state.
You think of those 19 out of 20 people, if you said to them, by the way, do you know that the Dunk is publicly financed? Do you know the Convention Center is publicly financed? Do you know that Veterans is publicly financed? Do you know that PPAC had public financing? And do you know that the current McCoy Stadium has partial public financing? And then they say, oh, geez, I didn't know that. Okay, well, maybe explain it more to me. If you create fertile intelligence, I think you get better response from the citizens.
Oh, I agree.
They're not stupid, but they're uninformed, and there's a difference.
Well, I agree. First, the PawSox did not properly communicate with the citizens of the state of Rhode Island, so that's a problem. Number 2, there's a big difference between a convention center. You have to publicly finance a convention center. Any thriving economy, any state that's worth its salt has a convention center, and Rhode Island is attracting businesses throughout the country. So you need a convention center to do that. A PawSox, a AAA baseball stadium, is elective at best.
You got the Dunk houses a AAA hockey team in PC, a private institution, both private teams.
Yes, but I don't know what the financing is on the Dunk, and the Dunk is owned by, I believe, the City of Providence or a governmental agency. The PawSox are owned by what the public perceives to be millionaires and billionaires, and
the P. Bruins are privately owned. PC is privately owned, but they play and pay rent into a facility that is publicly financed. I'm not arguing that it shouldn't be. I'm just looking for people to actually spread out and understand that there's so much common ground between everything that people are proud of in this state And this particular
The
project,
dunk wasn't built for the P. Bruins. It's a different analysis, Dan. This stadium is going to be built for one entity, essentially.
reportedly with multi-purpose.
Right, but essentially it's for the PawSox, and they're owned by millionaires and billionaires. I think the citizens of the state of Rhode Island have a right to determine whether or not they want to do that.
Okay, well,
and they're saying 2 to 1 that they don't.
Well, what happened in your caucus? We got a headline on this. So you just had a caucus, and reportedly, as you walked in there, kind of thinking referendum, you came out thinking no referendum. Correct?
I said a referendum is a potential direction we can go in. I never committed to it. I went into the caucus and my colleagues indicated that they did not think that would be appropriate.
Why?
You'd have to ask them. My best guess...
Well, they told you why.
My best guess would be that they think it's our responsibility. We're elected to make the decision, and we will. So what I want to suggest to people is don't necessarily assume that there's going to be any particular outcome. They all thought a referendum was not appropriate, but they also virtually all said we need a better deal for the state of Rhode Island. So they weren't signing on to this particular proposal.
If you're playing three-dimensional chess or attempting to, you might say, this is a way to kind of wind it back so that you can comfortably support this thing without having a signature on it. Talk referendum, you go into the caucus, you come out and say, hey, you know what? The members don't want they don't want a referendum. And by the way, I agree with them. It doesn't match up. You know, state bonding needs a state referendum. Redevelopment Authority in Pawtucket, whole different deal. It's heavy. We can go into the reasons. But I agree with your members who say no referendum. Okay. It's just a way for you to kind of coax back in. And then tomorrow night, there's a PawSox meeting in your district, which is just weird. Don't you think that's weird? That they're coming into your district to sue you via your constituents. I mean, that's weird.
I don't know what they're trying to accomplish. It's that they only reached out to people who have previously bought PawSox tickets, so it's going to be a positive group.
Some setup job?
They should have opened it up to everybody. I actually offered
Well, I'll be going. I'm going to find out what kind of setup job this whole thing is. I mean, listen, I'm not doing the PawSox bidding here. I think overall we ought to have this project. I have seen some real screwy, and this guy Default, who's like the mastermind of the marketing now, who's a provocative guy, is pulling what seems to be the typical stunts. By the way, some would say that it's all nothing but one big happy family, that they checked with you, the PawSox checked with you in terms of who you would recommend to lobby you. Do you actually ever lobby? Do you recommend to people who are trying to convince you of something what lobbyists they should hire to convince you of something?
No, I mean, I would, if they asked if someone was good at their job, I would say yes or no, depending on that, but I'm not going to, I don't give people...
Is Guy Default going to do work for you in your re-election campaign? Or
absolutely. He's good at what he does.
So isn't that
his son worked for me before.
And I wouldn't say it's illegal, but it is certainly incestuous.
Well, he's not getting the result he wants, though, is he? Is he? And let me get back to your earlier question. I'm pretty independent, and I'm going to do the right thing. So no, we're not backing off the referendum to give it a green light. The only way this project goes forward is if the PawSox takes a pause, they take a step back, and they communicate with the citizens of the state of Rhode Island. If the citizens of the state of Rhode Island, whom my district is part of, I mean, everyone likes to point at my district. I think my district is pretty reflective of the state right now.
What do you want them to do to communicate? What do you want them to do? So now there's no referendum. There's no set date for you to... Are you going to set a calendar for a vote in the House?
No.
So they've got this open-ended, you want them to communicate to the people. What do you want them to do? Spend $1 million? Are you going to approve their advertising and message? I mean, seriously, what do you want them to do so that you can move a vote?
Come up with a deal that the public wants and communicate that to the public.
Change the deal that the Senate passed, is what you're saying.
Yes, I've indicated that has to be renegotiated. I spoke to Mayor Grebian just last week after our caucus. I told him.
What do you want from them?
Well, I've already indicated there's got to be a lot of risk shifting. The only side of the equation that bears any risk in this proposal is the taxpayers. There are lots of assumptions, and everyone is super confident that the assumptions are going to be met, but the only side that bears the risk is the Rhode Island taxpayer.
Just let me hear you correctly. The Senate bill is dead in the House. As written.
The Senate bill is dead in the state of Rhode Island. 2/3 of the Rhode Islanders do not support it, and therefore the House will not support it.
All right, we'll be right back on some other issues. Stay with us. President Ruggiero, by the way, has been, I don't know, a friendly adversary with the Speaker? I'm not exactly sure. He threatened last week to sue the Senate, suing the House, unless you guys can get together in what is the JCLS, the Joint Committee on Legislative Services, meaning the committee that operates the General Assembly, and work out some better rules. And he also told me last week, after you told me after the State of the State that you think that the budget hawk responsibility, meaning the numbers game, really should be originating in the House, that he doesn't feel it should be. So you've got a strong inter-state House, inter-Democratic Party conflict going on. Are times changing? Is the House, the speakership, and maybe even you losing some traction?
No, I don't think so. I mean, it's up to the public. The public will, you know, they have a right to engage and support the House or support the Senate. My suggestion is the House has been the budget-oriented body for a very long time, and the Senate has usually spent.
Is it good because it always has been that way, or it's good because of a reason that you think is specific to efficiency? Is the House smarter than the Senate as a body?
No, I wouldn't suggest that, but the House has always taken the initiative constitutionally. The budget starts with us. It really only gets to the Senate after we send it to them, although they do hearings before then. The budget is not in the Senate until after we pass it, and we take that responsibility very seriously. You don't get bills, and just note what happens after the budget passes. The House never asks for budget bills. The Senate always asks for additional spending. The House takes the budget process and the spending of the state very, very seriously, and you know, we want to make sure that that things are done appropriately.
Well, this is going to be interesting because if you take it to, and you've done good work in knocking out the 2 a.m., 4 a.m. type of crap up there. Credit to you on that. But you better give yourself an artificial deadline earlier in June, seems to me, when you pass the budget, because if you take it all the way to the end of the calendar year, the Senate looks like they're going to play with you anyway. You better give yourself 3 or 4 or 5 days of room, don't you think?
Oh yeah. Then I mean, look, it is what it is.
You say no, they're not like. No, they're not. I got this thing.
No, they don't, because
they know where they stand.
No, it's not that. We can come together and pass a budget, or we don't have to necessarily pass a budget. Some states do it every 2 years. You know, everybody's looking at the car tax phase out there, and it's already current law. It gets phased in next year if we do nothing. So
I wish I had more time with you. Thank you. By the way, is there a number you have in mind that the PawSox need to cough up?
No, that's open to discussion, and it's subject to the public.
Final thought when we come back. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Dan.
On a much lighter note, the Patriots advanced to the Super Bowl. Surprise, surprise. Let me tell you something. You guys are lucky. This is not the video of what my point is, but let me tell you. If that fumble didn't get blown dead, nice catch, Raimondo. If that fumble didn't get blown dead, you're not going to the Super Bowl, so thank the officials. And by the way, URI is now in the top 25. Good for them. The program deserves it. We'll see you with the governor tomorrow night, and I'll see you on the radio at 3 on WPRO. Good night.